Professor Zexthree adjusted his forearms as he walked down the long corridor of Kepler Academic Station. His blue skin caught the artificial light from the ceiling panels, and his large eyes scanned the student's schedule on his datapad. Another semester was about to begin, and he felt the familiar mix of excitement and routine that came with teaching his favorite course. The station hummed quietly around him. Through the large windows he could see the brown and green surface of Centris Prime spinning slowly below. Ships of different shapes and sizes moved between the station and the planet, carrying students and professors from across the galaxy. It was a peaceful sight that always made him feel proud to work here. Zexthree had been teaching at Kepler Station for 15 years. He was known throughout the xenobiology department for his dramatic lectures and his deep knowledge of species that most people thought were just stories. His course, Legendary Species of the Outer Rim, was always full. Students loved hearing about the strange and dangerous creatures that supposedly lived in the far reaches of space. He reached his lecture hall and pressed his hand against the door scanner. The heavy metal door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, the room was arranged in a circle with his teaching platform in the center. The walls were covered with holographic displays showing images of various alien creatures. Most of them were artist drawings based on old stories and ancient texts. Zexthree walked to his desk and began setting up his equipment. He pulled out a small device that would project three-dimensional images into the air above his head. Today's lecture would cover the syllabus for the semester, but he always liked to start with a preview of the most exciting topic. Students began filing into the room. There were Krillin with their green, scaly skin and long tails. A few harbingers floated in their gaseous bodies contained in special environmental suits. Some Velthari like himself took seats in the front row, their forearms making note-taking easier than it was for most species. A group of young Zentari chattered to each other in their high-pitched voices, their fur changing colors as they got excited about the class. "Good morning, everyone," Zexthree said as the last students found their seats. His voice was clear and carried well in the circular room. "Welcome to Legendary Species of the Outer Rim. I am Professor Zexthree, and I will be your guide through some of the most fascinating and terrifying stories in galactic history." The students settled down and looked at him with interest. Many of them had heard about his reputation as a storyteller. He was known for making even the most academic subjects feel like adventures. This semester, we will explore 5 different species that have captured the imagination of civilizations across the galaxy. We will study the Void Walkers of the Andromeda Nebula, the Crystal Singers of the Magellanic Clouds, the Shadow Dancers of the Dark Sector, the Time Weavers of the Temporal Zones, and ... He paused for effect, the humans of the Sol System. Ripple of excitement went through the room. The humans were always the most popular topic. Students leaned forward in their seats. "Now, I know what you're thinking," Zexthree continued with a smile. "You've all heard the stories about humans, the species that could survive anything, the ones who formed packs with other species and fought together against impossible odds, the creatures who could enter something called berserker rage and become unstoppable in battle." A young Krillin raised her hand. "Professor, is it true that humans could live on worlds that would kill other species?" "According to the ancient texts, yes," Zexthree replied. "They supposedly came from a world called Earth, which was described as a death world. The gravity was crushing, the atmosphere was toxic to most species, and the planet was covered in dangerous predators. Yet somehow, humans not only survived, but thrived there." Another student, a Zentari with bright orange fur, spoke up. "What about the stories of human pack bonding? Did they really adopt other species as family members?" Zexthree nodded enthusiastically. "The legends speak of humans who would risk their lives to save members of other species. They supposedly had an instinct to protect and care for any creature they considered part of their pack. There are stories of humans who died defending alien friends, even when it made no logical sense." The students were completely absorbed now. This was why Zexthree loved teaching this course. The stories were so incredible that they captured everyone's imagination. But Professor, asked a harbinger in a mechanical voice filtered through their environmental suit, why don't we see humans anymore? What happened to them? Zextheri's expression became more serious. That is one of the great mysteries of Galactic history. The last confirmed sighting of a human was over 300 years ago. Some scholars believe they destroyed themselves in wars. Others think they retreated to the far edges of the galaxy. A few even suggest they evolved beyond physical form and became something else entirely. He activated his holographic projector, and an image appeared above his head. It showed a bipedal creature with pale skin, dark hair, and 2 arms. The figure was wearing some kind of protective suit and holding a weapon. This is the most accurate representation we have of what humans looked like, Zextheri explained. They were surprisingly small compared to most galactic species, only about 2 meters tall with relatively weak physical bodies. But according to the legends, what they lacked in size and strength, they made up for in determination and cunning. The image changed to show a group of the creatures working together to build something. They were supposedly excellent at cooperation and problem-solving. The stories say they could adapt to almost any situation and find solutions that other species would never think of. A student near the back raised her hand. Professor, do you think the stories are true? Or are they just myths that got bigger? Over time, Zextheri considered the question carefully. That is something we will explore throughout this semester. We will examine the evidence, look at the source materials, and try to separate fact from fiction. But I will tell you this, even if only half of the stories are true, humans were truly remarkable creatures. He looked around the room at his students' eager faces. Our journey this semester will take us through ancient texts, archaeological evidence, and eyewitness accounts. We will try to understand not just what these species were like, but why they have captured our imaginations for so long. The class period was almost over, but Zextheri could see that his students wanted to hear more. For next week, please read chapters 1 through 3 in your textbook. We will begin our detailed study of the Void Walkers. And remember, keep an open mind. Sometimes the most incredible stories turn out to be true. As the students filed out of the room, chattering excitedly about the semester ahead, Zextheri began packing up his equipment. He smiled to himself, thinking about how much he enjoyed sharing these amazing stories with young minds. Little did he know that his comfortable world of myths and legends was about to be turned completely upside down. Professor Zextheri arrived at his lecture hall 15 minutes early, just as he always did. He liked to have everything ready before his students arrived. Today was the second class of the semester, and he was excited to begin their study of the Void Walkers. He had prepared several dramatic holographic presentations that would show how these mysterious beings supposedly moved through space without ships. He was arranging his notes when he heard footsteps in the corridor. The first student was arriving. Zextheri looked up from his desk and saw a figure standing in the doorway. The professor blinked his large eyes several times, trying to process what he was seeing. The creature was tall and bipedal, with pale skin and dark hair. It wore simple clothing and carried a standard student datapad. But something about its appearance made Zextheri feel uncomfortable. There was something familiar about the way it looked, though he could not place where he had seen this species before. Excuse me, the creature said in perfect galactic common. Is this Professor Zextheri's class on legendary species? The professor nodded slowly. Yes, it is. But I do not recognize your species. Are you a new exchange student? The creature smiled, showing white teeth. Yeah, I'm Jake Murphy. I just transferred here from Earth University. I'm studying mechanical engineering, but I needed some elective credits, and this class sounded interesting. Zextheri felt a strange chill run through his blue skin. Earth University? I'm not familiar with that institution. What system is it located in? The Sol system, Jake replied casually as he walked into the room. You know Earth, third planet from the sun? It's where humans come from. The professor's forearms began to tremble. The datapad he was holding clattered to the floor. What did you just say? I said I'm from Earth, I'm human. Jake looked confused by the professor's reaction. Is there a problem with that? Zexthary's vision began to blur. The room seemed to spin around him. This could not be happening. Humans. Or extinct. They were legends. They were stories told to fascinate students, not real creatures that walked into lecture halls and asked about class schedules. That is impossible, he whispered. Humans are not real. They are mythical. They disappeared centuries ago? Jake set down his datapad and looked at the professor with concern. Are you feeling okay? You look like you're about to faint. I am fine, Zexthary said, though his voice was shaky. But you cannot be human. Humans do not exist anymore. They are legends. Well, that's news to me, Jake said with a laugh. I was definitely human when I woke up this morning. So were my parents and my sister and everyone else back home. The professor tried to stand up, but his legs would not support him. He sat back down heavily in his chair. This cannot be real. You must be confused about your species. Perhaps you are from a colony world that has lost touch with its origins. Other students began entering the classroom. A young Kreelan saw the strange bipedal creature and gasped. Professor, what is that thing? I'm Jake Murphy, Jake said, turning to greet the other student. I'm human. Nice to meet you. The Kreelan's green scales turned pale. Human? But humans are extinct. No, we're not, Jake said patiently. There are about 12 billion of us, living in the Sol system alone, plus colonies on about 40 other worlds. More students were arriving now, and they all stopped to stare at Jake, the room filled with whispers and gasps of disbelief. A Zentari's fur flashed bright red with shock. A Harbinger's environmental suit made alarmed beeping sounds. Everyone. Calm down, Professor Zexthary said, though his own voice was far from calm. This individual claims to be human, but as we discussed last week, humans are a legendary species. They have been extinct for over 3 centuries. Jake pulled out his student identification card and handed it to the professor. Look, here's my ID, species classification, human, homeworld, Earth. I don't know why you think we're extinct, but I can assure you we're not. Zexthary looked at the ID card with shaking hands. The holographic seal was genuine, and the information was clearly displayed. But this had to be some kind of mistake or elaborate joke. Perhaps there has been an error in your classification, he suggested. The registration computers must have malfunctioned. You are probably from a species that resembles the legendary humans. I don't think so, Jake said. I mean, my parents are definitely human. My grandparents were human. I've got human DNA and human blood and human everything else. I'm pretty sure I know what species I am. A brave Velthary student raised her hand. If you are really human, can you demonstrate your berserker rage? Jake looked confused. My what? Your berserker rage, she repeated. The legendary fury that makes humans unstoppable in battle. I don't have a berserker rage, Jake said. I mean, I get annoyed sometimes, but I wouldn't call it a rage. Another student called out, What about your pack bonding abilities? Ken, you adopt us as family members? Pack bonding? Jake scratched his head. I'm friendly, I guess. I like meeting new people. But I don't know what you mean by pack bonding. The students looked disappointed. This was not matching any of the stories. They had heard about humans. What about your incredible survival abilities? Asked a Kreelan. Can you survive on death worlds? I live on Earth, Jake said. I guess that's pretty normal for humans. I mean, it's our home planet, so we're adapted to it. Professor Zexthary was struggling to process what he was hearing. If this creature really was human, then everything he had taught about humans was wrong. They were not extinct, they were not mythical, they were apparently ordinary people who lived normal lives and attended universities. This is impossible, he muttered. My entire career is based on the study of extinct species. I have written papers about human mythology. I have given lectures about their legendary abilities. Maybe your information is just outdated, Jake suggested helpfully. I mean, 300 years is a long time. Maybe whoever told you we were extinct just hadn't checked recently. The professor looked around the room at his students. They were all staring at Jake with fascination but also with disappointment. This ordinary young man was nothing like the fearsome warriors of legend. "If you are truly human," Zexthury said slowly, "then I need to contact the authorities. This is a matter of extreme scientific importance." "Authorities?" Jake looked worried. "I'm not in trouble, am I? I just wanted to take your class." "No, no," the professor said quickly. "Not those kinds of authorities? I mean the academic authorities? The Xenobiology Department? The Species Classification Board? If humans are not extinct, then we need to update our records immediately." He stood up on unsteady legs and walked to his communication console. "Class is dismissed for today. I need to make some urgent calls." As the students filed out, many of them stayed to stare at Jake. He waved at them politely, not understanding why he was causing such a commotion. "So," Jake said to the professor, "should I come back next week?" Zexthury looked at him with wide eyes. "I honestly have no idea. I need to figure out what this means for my entire field of study." Jake shrugged. "Okay, well, I'll check back later." "Hope you feel better, Professor." As Jake walked out of the lecture hall, Zexthury sat down heavily in his chair. Everything he thought he knew about the galaxy had just been turned upside down. And it was only the second day of class. Professor Zexthury paced back and forth in his office, his forearms gesturing wildly as he spoke into his communication device. He had been making calls for 2 hours, and each conversation made him more confused and frustrated. "What do you mean you have 3 humans working in the engineering department?" he asked Dean Corthwell, his crystalline superior. "How is that possible? Why was I not informed?" The dean's voice crackled through the speaker. "Zexthury, humans have been part of the Galactic Federation for 30 years. They joined right after first contact. We have hundreds of them working throughout the station." "But that cannot be right," the professor insisted. "Humans are extinct. I have built my entire career on studying extinct species. I have published papers about their mythology." "Perhaps you should have checked your sources more carefully," the dean replied dryly. "I am sending Security Chief Rex to your office. He will escort you to the medical bay for verification testing." The communication ended, leaving Zexthury staring at the device in shock. 30 years. Humans had been alive and active in the galaxy for 30 years, and somehow he had missed it completely. A few minutes later, his door chimed. Security Chief Rex entered, his insectoid body clicking as he moved. His compound eyes focused on the professor with what might have been amusement. "Professor Zexthury," Rex said in his buzzing voice, "I understand you have discovered humans exist. This is causing quite a stir in the academic department." "It is not funny," Zexthury said miserably. "How did I not know? How did no one tell me?" "You never asked," Rex replied simply. "Most people know humans are real. They work in our cafeteria, they maintain our ships, they serve in our military, they are very common." The professor felt his world crumbling around him, but the ancient texts, the legends, the stories of their incredible abilities. "Stories tend to grow larger over time," Rex said. "Come, we will go to the medical bay and verify your student's species. Then you can meet Dr. Lisa Grant. She is human, and she has worked here for 3 years. They walked through the station corridors, and now Zexthury began to notice things he had somehow missed before. A human woman worked at the information desk. A human man was repairing a wall panel. 2 human children played in the family recreation area while their parents watched. "How did I not see them?" he whispered to himself. "You saw what you expected to see," Rex replied. "You expected humans to be extinct, so you classified them as other species when you encountered them." They reached the medical bay, where Jake Murphy was waiting with Dr. Lisa Grant. The doctor was a middle-aged woman with brown hair and kind eyes. She looked exactly like the descriptions in the ancient texts, but she was wearing a standard medical uniform and checking a data pad. "Professor Zexthury," she said with a smile. "I hear you were surprised to meet Jake. I can understand the confusion. Many people still think of humans as mysterious or legendary. You are really human?" Zexthury asked, still not quite believing it. "Born and raised on Earth. Dr. Grant confirmed. I came here 3 years ago to study xenobiology. Ironically, I have been trying to get a meeting with you to discuss your research on human mythology. The professor sat down heavily in a chair. My research is completely wrong, is it not? Not wrong, Dr. Grant said gently. Just outdated. The stories you teach are based on real events, but they have been exaggerated over time. Humans did fight in wars, we did survive on harsh worlds, and we do form strong bonds with other species. But we are not the superhuman warriors of legend. Jake spoke up from the examination table. Dr. Grant has been explaining some of the stories. To me, I had no idea people thought we were extinct. Or that we had berserker rage. Show him the test results. Vrex suggested. Dr. Grant activated a holographic display that showed Jake's genetic structure. This is definitely human DNA, Earth human to be specific. There is no doubt about his species. Zexthury stared at the genetic readout. Everything he had taught about humans being extinct was wrong. But if humans were real and alive, what did that mean for his other research? Dr. Grant, he said slowly, what about the stories of human pack bonding? The legends say humans would adopt other species as family members and fight to the death to protect them. That is actually true, she replied. Humans do form strong, emotional bonds with other species. We have a natural tendency to care for others, especially those we consider friends or family, but we call it friendship and loyalty, not pack bonding. And the berserker rage? Zexthury asked hopefully. Jake laughed. I think that might be exaggerated. I mean, humans can get angry, and we fight hard when we need to protect people we care about, but we are not unstoppable rage monsters. What? About surviving on death worlds? The professor continued. Earth is considered a death world by galactic standards, Dr. Grant explained. High gravity, dangerous weather, lots of predators. But it is our home, so we adapted to it. We are tougher than some species, but not superhuman. Zexthury felt a mix of disappointment and fascination. So, humans are real, but they are not the legendary warriors I have been teaching about. We are just people, Jake said with a shrug. We work, we study, we have families. We are good at solving problems and we care about our friends. But we are not mythical creatures. Dr. Grant pulled up another display. Professor, I have been studying the source materials for your human mythology course. The stories are based on real events from human history. Wars we fought, colonies we established, alliances we made with other species. But over 3 centuries, the stories became legends. So everything I have taught is fiction? Zexthury asked miserably. Not fiction, Dr. Grant corrected, just dramatized. Humans did fight against overwhelming odds. We did survive on hostile worlds. We did form lasting friendships with alien species. But we did it through cooperation, determination, and ingenuity, not through superhuman powers. Jake nodded. My great-grandfather fought in the Kepler Rebellion. He always said humans won because they were stubborn and refused to give up, not because they were stronger than everyone else. Security Chief Vrex clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. The truth is often more interesting than the legend. Humans achieved remarkable things by being clever and determined. That is more impressive than magical powers. Dr. Grant turned to the professor. Professor Zexthury, your research has value. You have preserved important stories about human history, but now you have the chance to study the real thing. Living humans who can tell you what really happened. Your student Jake could be your greatest resource, she continued. He can provide the human perspective on the events you have been teaching about. Zexthury looked at Jake, who was swinging his legs from the examination table like a child. This ordinary young man was supposedly a member of the legendary human species. But maybe that was the point. Maybe humans were legendary not because they were superhuman, but because they were so remarkably human. Jake, the professor said carefully, would you be willing to help me understand what humans are really like? Sure, Jake replied cheerfully. I would be happy to help. Though I should warn you, most of us are pretty boring. We work, we eat, we sleep, we watch entertainment programs. We are not nearly as exciting as your stories make us sound. Perhaps, Zexthery said thoughtfully, that is what makes you truly remarkable. As they left the medical bay, the professor realized that his world had not ended. It had just become much more interesting. The next morning, Professor Zexthery arrived at his office to find 3 humans waiting for him. Dr. Lisa Grant stood beside a woman in a dark blue uniform with captain's insignia, while a well-dressed man in formal diplomatic clothing held a datapad. "Professor," Dr. Grant said, "I would like you to meet Captain Amy Rodriguez and Ambassador Chun Wei." They arrived on the station last night for routine trade negotiations. Zexthery blinked his large eyes several times. Yesterday, he had thought, humans were extinct. Now he was meeting 3 of them in one day. "How many humans are there?" he asked weakly. "On this station?" "About 200, Captain Rodriguez replied in a friendly voice. "In the Federation, maybe 50 million. Back home in human space, around 15 billion. The professor sat down heavily in his chair. 15 billion. He had been teaching about an extinct species that actually had 15 billion living members. "I came to meet you because Jake Murphy asked me to," Captain Rodriguez continued. "He said you were studying human history and might want to hear some real stories." "Jake asked you to come?" Zexthery was confused. "How does he know a starship captain?" "Jake is my cousin," she replied with a smile. "His mother and my father are siblings. When he heard I was coming to the station, he sent me a message asking if I could help with his professor's research." Ambassador Chun Wei stepped forward. "Dr. Grant explained your situation, Professor. You have been teaching human mythology without knowing that humans still exist. We thought we could help correct some of the misconceptions." "This is very kind of you," Zexthery said, still feeling overwhelmed. "But I do not understand why you would help me." "I've been teaching false information about your species for years, because you preserved our stories," Captain Rodriguez said. "Even if they got exaggerated over time, you kept the memory of human achievements alive. That matters to us." The professor activated his recording device. "May I ask you about some of the legends I have been teaching? I want to understand what really happened." "Of course," Ambassador Chun said. "What would you like to know?" "The Battle of Kepler 7, Zexthery began. "The legends say a small group of humans defeated an entire army of Vorthic warriors through berserker rage." Captain Rodriguez laughed. "My great-great-grandmother was there. The humans were outnumbered 50-1, but they won through strategy and stubbornness. They dug into defensive positions and held them for 6 days without sleep. No berserker rage, just determination. And good tactics." "What about the story of the human who adopted a Zentari cub and raised it as her own child?" the professor asked. "That was Captain Sarah Mitchell," Ambassador Chun replied. "She found an orphan Zentari after a disaster on Colony 7. She took care of the cub because it needed help, not because of some mystical pack-bonding instinct. The cub grew up to become a respected diplomat. They stayed friends for life." Zexthery made notes as they talked. "And the legend of humans surviving on the poison world of Zarian Prime, the mining colony," Captain Rodriguez nodded. "The atmosphere was toxic to most species, but humans have good immune systems and we adapt quickly. We built sealed habitats and developed filters for the air. It was not magic, just engineering and persistence." "So all the stories are true, but not in the way I taught them," the professor realized. "Exactly," Dr. Grant said. "Humans did remarkable things, but we did them by working together and never giving up. We are not superhuman, just very stubborn." Ambassador Chun opened his datapad. "Professor, I have some historical documents that might interest you. These are first-hand accounts from the events you teach about. They were written by the humans who were actually there." Zexthery took the device and began reading. The accounts were very different from the legends he knew. They showed humans who were afraid, tired, and often overwhelmed by their circumstances. But they also showed people who kept trying even when things seemed hopeless. "This is fascinating," he said. "These humans sound so much more real than the legends." "Because they were real," Captain Rodriguez said. "They were just people doing their best in difficult situations." Jake Murphy arrived at the office, carrying a tray of drinks from the station cafeteria. "I brought coffee for everyone," he announced. "Professor, I thought you might want to try it. It is a human drink." "Jake," Zexthury said, "your cousin has been telling me about real human history. It is very different from what I have been teaching." "Yeah, we are not nearly as exciting as you make us sound," Jake said with a grin. "Most of human history is just people trying to figure out how to grow food, build houses, and get along with their neighbors. But that is exactly what makes it interesting," the professor replied. "The legends made humans sound like gods. The reality shows they were people who achieved incredible things through ordinary virtues." Dr. Grant smiled. "Professor, would you like to observe some humans in their natural habitat? I mean, just watching them work and interact with other species? That would be very educational," Zexthury said eagerly. Captain Rodriguez stood up. "I have to oversee the loading of trade goods this afternoon. You are welcome to watch if you want to see humans working." They walked to the cargo bay, where dozens of humans and aliens were loading supplies onto Rodriguez's ship. Zexthury watched in fascination as humans worked alongside Creel workers, Centauri supervisors, and Velthri engineers. They joked with each other, shared tools, and helped solve problems together. "This is pack bonding," he whispered to Dr. Grant. "This is just friendship," she replied. "Humans like working with others. We are social creatures." A young human worker was struggling to lift a heavy crate. Without being asked, a Creel worker helped him move it. In return, the human shared his lunch. With the Creel, it was a simple exchange, but Zexthury found it more moving than any of the legends he had taught. "They make it look so easy," he said. "Because it is easy," Jake replied. "You just treat people well and help when you can. Most humans learn this as children." Ambassador Chun pointed to a group of workers who were discussing a technical problem. "Watch how they solve problems, Professor. No one is in charge, but they work together to find an answer." Zexthury observed as the mixed group of humans and aliens tested different solutions. Each species contributed their strengths, and together they found an answer that none of them could have discovered alone. This is why humans succeeded, he realized. Not because they were stronger or more aggressive, but because they were good at cooperation. "Now you are beginning to understand," Dr. Grant said, as they watched the workers. Zexthury felt his understanding of humans completely changing. They were not the mythical warriors he had taught about. They were something much more remarkable, ordinary people who achieved extraordinary things through determination, cooperation, and kindness. "Jake," he said suddenly, "I want to completely change my course. Instead of teaching about legendary humans, I want to teach about real humans. Will you help me?" "I would be honored to help," Jake replied, "though I still think you will find U.S. pretty boring." "I think I will find you amazing," the professor said with conviction. Professor Zexthury stood in front of his empty lecture hall at 6 in the morning, completely rebuilding his entire course. He had spent the last 3 days working with Dr. Grant, Jake, Captain Rodriguez, and Ambassador Chun to create something entirely new. His holographic displays now showed real human cities, actual historical documents, and photographs of humans working alongside other species. The old images of mythical human warriors were gone. In their place were pictures of human families, human scientists, human artists, and human farmers. The professor had discovered that reality was far more interesting than any legend. Jake walked into the room carrying a box of items from Earth. "Good morning, Professor. I brought some things from home that might help with your new lectures." "What did you bring?" Zexthury asked, his forearms reaching for the box. "Music recordings, some books, family photos, and food samples," Jake replied. "I figured if you are going to teach about human culture, you should have real examples." The professor opened the box and pulled out a small device. "What is this?" "That is a music player," Jake explained. "It has songs from different periods of human history. Music is very important to human culture." Zexthury activated the device, and soft instrumental music filled the room. It was unlike anything he had heard before, complex but emotional, structured but free. This is beautiful. Humans created this? Humans have been making music for thousands of years, Jake said. We use it to express emotions, tell stories, and bring people together. Every human culture has its own musical traditions. Dr. Grant entered the room with a data pad. Professor, I have the enrollment numbers for your redesigned course. Word has spread about your new approach to human studies. How many students signed up? Zexthury asked nervously. 247, she replied with a smile. You will need a bigger lecture hall. The professor's eyes widened. His old course had never had more than 30 students. Why are so many interested? Because now they can learn about a living culture, Dr. Grant explained. Students want to understand the humans they work and live with every day. Captain Rodriguez arrived with 3 other humans, a teacher, an engineer, and an artist. Professor, I brought some friends who volunteered to help with your new course. They represent different aspects of human society. The teacher, a woman named Betty Clark, stepped forward. I heard you want to teach about real human culture. I can help explain our education systems and how we raise our children. The engineer, a man named Tony Kim, nodded. I can talk about human technology and how we approach problem solving. The artist, a young woman named Maria Santos, smiled shyly. I brought some of my paintings and sculptures. Art is how humans express their deepest thoughts and feelings. Zexthury felt overwhelmed by their generosity. Why are you all willing to help me? I spent years teaching incorrect information about your species. Because you cared enough to preserve our stories, Betty replied. Even if they were exaggerated, you kept human history alive when many people forgot about us. And because education matters, Tony added. The more aliens understand about humans, the better we can all work together. Maria unpacked her artwork, revealing colorful paintings of Earth landscapes and abstract sculptures. Professor, these pieces show how humans see beauty in the world around us. Art helps us process emotions and share experiences. The professor studied the artwork carefully. The paintings showed rolling green hills, blue oceans, and golden sunsets. They were nothing like the harsh death world described in the ancient texts. Earth looks peaceful in these images. Earth can be dangerous, Jake explained, but it is also incredibly beautiful. Humans learn to appreciate both aspects of our world. Dr. Grant activated a new holographic display. Professor, I have created a timeline of actual human history. It shows our real achievements without the mythological elements. The display showed humans discovering fire, developing agriculture, building cities, and eventually reaching space. Each advancement was marked with real dates and evidence, not legends and speculation. This is remarkable, Zexthury said, studying the timeline. Humans developed from primitive hunters to space travelers in only a few thousand years. We are good at adapting and learning, Betty explained. Each generation builds on what the previous generation discovered. Students began arriving for the first class of the restructured course. They looked around in amazement at the new displays, the human artifacts and the group of actual humans standing at the front of the room. Welcome, Professor Zexthury announced, to Contemporary Human Studies. Today we begin a journey to understand one of the galaxy's most remarkable species, not because they are mythical warriors, but because they are extraordinary people. The students settled into their seats, many of them leaning forward with curiosity. This was very different from the professor's previous dramatic storytelling style. I want to begin with an apology, the professor continued. For years I taught you that humans were extinct legends. I was wrong? Humans are very much alive, and they are far more interesting than any myth. Jake stepped forward and waved at the class. Several students gasped. They recognized him from the chaotic second class of the previous week. This is Jake Murphy, the professor said. He is human, and he is going to help us understand what that really means. Jake, would you like to introduce yourself? Hi, everyone, Jake said with his usual friendly smile. I am from Earth, which is a pretty normal planet where I live with my family and work as a mechanic. I like fixing things, playing sports, and spending time with friends. I know that is not as exciting as Berserker Rage, but it is what most humans are actually like. A Zentari student raised her hand. Jake, what is the most important thing about being human? Jake thought for a moment. Probably that we care about each other. Humans work best when we are helping other people. That includes aliens, by the way. If you are in trouble, most humans will try to help you, even if they do not know you. Is that pack bonding? Asked a Krelin. I guess you could call it that, Jake replied. We just call it being decent people. Professor Zexthery watched his students listening intently to Jake's simple, honest answers. This was exactly what he had hoped for, real understanding instead. Of mythical fantasies. Dr. Grant stepped forward. Students, over the next semester you will learn about human history, culture, art, science, and society. You will meet humans from different backgrounds and understand how they think and feel. Most importantly, the professor added, you will discover that the most amazing thing about humans is not their legendary powers, but their very real capacity for growth, cooperation, and compassion. As the class progressed, Zexthery realized that his career had not ended, it had been reborn. Teaching about real humans was far more rewarding than teaching about mythical ones. 6 months later, Professor Zexthery stood in the largest lecture hall on Kepler Academic Station, looking out at 300 eager students. His Contemporary Human Studies course had become the most popular class in the xenobiology department. Students from across the galaxy came to the station just to attend his lectures. Today we will discuss human artistic expression, he announced to the packed room. Our guest lecturer is Maria Santos, a human artist who will demonstrate traditional earth painting techniques. Maria walked to the front of the room carrying a canvas and brushes. Over the past months, she had become one of the most beloved guest speakers. Students were fascinated by how humans used art to express emotions and ideas. Good morning, everyone, Maria said with a warm smile. Today I want to show you how humans see color and light. We will paint together, and you can create your own human-style artwork. A young Zentari raised her paw excitedly. Maria, will you teach us about the human celebration called birthdays? My human roommate keeps talking about it. Of course, Maria replied. Birthdays are how humans celebrate the day someone was born. We give gifts, eat special food, and spend time with friends and family. It is our way of showing people that we are happy they exist. Professor Zexthery watched as his students took notes eagerly. 6 months ago, they had expected humans to demonstrate superhuman combat abilities. Now they were excited to learn about birthday parties and painting techniques. The change amazed him every day. Jake Murphy entered the room carrying a tray of fresh bread from the station's human bakery. He had officially become the Cultural Exchange Coordinator, a new position created specifically for him. His job was to help humans and aliens understand each other better. Sorry I'm late, Professor, Jake said. I was helping some new Krelin. Students find the library. I brought lunch for everyone. This had become a tradition in the class. Jake would bring human food for students to try, and they would share dishes from their own cultures. The professor had learned that food was one of the best ways for different species to connect with each other. Dr. Lisa Grant walked in with a data pad full of good news. Professor, I have the latest enrollment numbers for next semester. 412 students have signed up. We will need to use the main auditorium. 400? Zexthery's forearms gestured in amazement. That is more students than some entire departments have. Word has spread throughout the Federation. Dr. Grant explained. Universities on 12 different worlds are asking you to visit and give lectures about your teaching methods. A Harbinger student floated forward in their environmental suit. Professor, my family wants to invite Jake to visit our homeworld. They want to learn about human culture directly. Jake looked surprised. Your family wants to meet me? You have become famous in our culture network, the Harbinger explained. My parents say you represent the best of what humans can be, friendly, helpful, and wise. I am not wise, Jake protested with a laugh. I am just a mechanic who likes meeting new people. That is exactly what makes you wise, Professor Zexthery said. You understand that the most important thing about any species is their capacity for friendship. Captain Amy Rodriguez entered the room with exciting news. Professor, the Federation Council has approved your proposal. They are establishing the Center for Contemporary Species Studies, and they want you to be the director. The professor felt his heart beating faster. The center would be dedicated to studying living cultures instead of extinct ones. It would bring together researchers from across the galaxy to learn about each other in real time. This is incredible, he said, but I could not have done this without all of you. Jake, you showed me that reality is more amazing than any legend. Dr. Grant, you helped me understand real science. Maria, Tony, Betty, and all the other humans taught me about your culture. A Velthary student spoke up. Professor, what will happen to your old research on extinct species? I am working with historians to correct the misinformation, Zexthery replied. We are publishing new papers that separate fact from fiction in the old legends. The stories are still valuable as literature and culture, but now we know what really happened. Jake raised his hand like a student. Professor, I have a question. When you first met me, you were upset that humans were not extinct. Do you ever miss teaching about mythical creatures? Zexthery considered the question carefully. Jake, teaching about legends was exciting because they seemed impossible. But teaching about real humans is rewarding because it actually matters. When students understand human culture, they can work better with human colleagues, make human friends, and build a better galaxy for everyone. Maria finished her painting demonstration, showing a beautiful landscape of Earth with blue skies and green forests. The alien students had created their own versions, each reflecting how their species saw color and light. The room was filled with dozens of unique artworks. This is what I love about human culture, said a Kreelan student holding up her painting. Humans teach us that everyone can create beauty, even if we see the world differently. Ambassador Chun Wei arrived with an official-looking document. Professor, I have a message from Earth University. They want to establish a formal partnership with your program. Human students will come here to learn about alien cultures, while alien students visit Earth to learn about human society. True cultural exchange, the professor said with satisfaction. Students learning from each other instead of just studying theories. As the class ended, students lingered to talk with the human guests and examine the artwork. Zexthery watched as a young Zentari showed. Jake her painting while a harbinger discussed poetry with Maria. These were the real connections that mattered. Professor, Jake said as he helped clean up, I have some news. My sister Emma is coming to the station next month. She's a teacher, and she wants to help develop curriculum for human studies programs on other worlds. That is wonderful, Zexthery replied. The more humans we have helping with education, the better. Dr. Grant approached with a smile. Professor, do you remember 6 months ago when you thought your career was over because humans were not extinct? I remember, he said with a laugh. I was convinced that meeting Jake was the worst thing that could happen to my academic life. And now, Professor Zexthery looked around the room at students and humans working together, learning from each other, and building genuine friendships across species lines. His old course about extinct legends had entertained students for an hour. His new program was changing lives and bringing the galaxy closer together. Now, I know that meeting Jake was the best thing that ever happened to my career, he said. And more importantly, it was the beginning of something much bigger than any of us imagined. As they left the lecture hall together, Zexthery realized that his worst day had become the foundation for his best work. Sometimes the most wonderful discoveries come from having your entire world turned upside down by someone walking through your door.